We're gonna start with the most likely soon to be butchered by almost every movie theater customer ever title.
Yes.
Which you will get to know firsthand, I'm sure.
In a couple hours.
As above, so below. I even struggled with it at first, like back when it was first announced. And it is immediately it got a lot of comparisons to The Descent, which was unfortunate because I don't like that movie. I had a really hard time getting into it, and I just didn't think much of it.
After the trailer, I can definitely see where that's coming from.
And the I didn't know this till like this morning, but apparently the guy that did is the director of Quarantine.
Now it makes more sense.
Which also would have been a bit of a red flag. So,
yep.
And it's found footage, so this movie had a lot going against it when we went in.
Yeah. Great crowd too.
Yeah. 2 other people. In the smallest theater we have.
Yes.
It's a movie about claustrophobia. Of course, they put it in the smallest theater we have.
That wasn't done ironically.
How adorable. No, it's in a big theater now, I think. I saw when we were leaving.
It's in 2 as of this
We were
moment.
leaving the November, man.
Yeah. We'll talk about that later.
So we start with this woman whose name I don't remember.
Scarlett.
What?
Yeah.
I don't ever remember hearing her name.
I definitely remember her name was Scarlett because my friend Scarlett, so that's how I remembered.
The actress's name is Perdita Weeks, I think. And she is... We first see her in this prologue where she's basically trying to finish her father's work after he committed suicide. And it involves finding the Philosopher's Stone and Nicholas Flamel's tomb. I'm not going to make any Potter jokes because I'm sure the critics have already beaten that to death by now. So, she rounds up of course, one of her crew happens to be a documentarian who I think is the guy from The Purge. And her, ex, I guess.
That's what it seems like.
Is the, interpreter of the, foreign Prometheus writing on the walls. And then they recruit basically a guy that's basically not... He makes it apparent that he's not a tour guide, but he basically guides them through the catacombs because he supposedly knows the area. And he brings some girl with him. Because we need one more body.
Of course.
No, they have 2 more people with them. And the first thing the movie does right is these characters aren't like cardboard cutouts or boring.
No.
Like that particular scene in the van where they're just rapping and the one guy's like doing De Niro impressions.
We're the ones that laughed. I think it was 2 other people.
So, and obviously it's kind of in a found footage movie, obviously you're gonna have even if it's bad, you're gonna have a really slow start. But what this does right that most of them do wrong is the fact that usually watching found footage movies, we get this character build up that takes forever, and it's just getting to know a bunch of characters that you hope die.
Yes.
But the thing about it with this character is, the main character is, she makes her determination so apparent. So you know why, even when she's like, you absolutely, if you're smart at all, should not be moving forward. But you buy her determination so much that it makes sense for her character to keep going even when she probably shouldn't be.
Yeah, definitely.
And they have to go 370 feet under Flamel's tomb, apparently.
Yes.
And she's hoping she'll find what she's looking for. There are some cliches in there. Like, for instance, this makes more sense by the end, but my first thought was, normally when you see found footage movies, it's just kind of like, obviously the dude walking around with the camera, and then it'll cut to a different scene, which is obviously him turning the camera on and off.
Yeah.
But when they're in the scene, like when they're inside the church, where the church bell is, when she's talking to him, the footage is edited like it's a movie. And my first thought was, if somebody just found this and they're just watching it, who the fuck edited it?
It has has to be broadcastable. We must change everything.
But that's beside the point. Some of the cliches, like, we do have the character that screams like he's in trouble, and just when he gets everybody into a panic, he laughs like an idiot and says, "Oh, just kidding." That scene's in here.
Yep.
But for the most part, honestly, it takes we see so many movies now, especially so many horror movies, and most of them are really, really bad.
Yeah.
Being scary in any way is kind of a hard thing to do now. Because audiences have pretty much seen everything. But honestly, for the most part, this movie is creepy as hell.
Yeah, it is.
Like, there's some scenes that are just kind of, there's some cheap jump scares in there, but not very many. But it really sets an eerie tone, and it pulls off the claustrophobia thing really well. There's one scene that really stands out that would have been really repetitive and grating in any other movie, but the way they did it here was done so well. There's this really I didn't want to, sometimes in my house late at night I have to walk around in the dark.
Yeah.
I didn't want to do that last night after we saw this.
Wow.
When they're first going down, we hear the sound of people singing.
Yeah.
And you can see that they're like this little cult or something.
Yeah.
And there's this girl that we saw come out of the club earlier. That was kind of a jarring shot in itself when she just came out of the club and stared into the camera for a second and walked off, where we knew we're probably going to see. She reminded me of the succubus from VHS.
Yes, very much so.
Well, she's like the leader of this cult, apparently, that just hangs out in the catacombs and lights candles and sings creepy shit. And they look like ghosts, and it
was unsettling.
But then, they're going up this really, really tiny crevice where all of the human bones are. And the documentarian gets stuck. And he literally can't move and he can't breathe. And you can feel the claustrophobia setting in. And while that's going on, you can hear the singing in the background like it's getting closer and closer. Jesus Christ, that scene. And they even threw that little comedy in there too, where he's like, "Why are they fucking singing? Tell them to stop." That scene's really...
It's jarring.
It's really the kind of stuff these movies should have.
Definitely.
It's also worth noting that the use of sound is really great here. The way the singing is kind of building in that scene, and also this movie has one of the creepiest phones I have ever seen.
Oh, I know.
Like, the ringing itself is creepy enough, and how it gets closer. And then when they find it, just like this old-timey phone that's covered in dust and has a creepy voice on the other end of it, it sounds like cheesy haunted house shit, but
it's not.
It's just the... Whatever they did just makes it really, really creepy in a really effective way. Black cloak guy.
The sound of fire getting close too, which of course is blown in the trailer.
And I'm sure a lot of this was blown in the trailer.
Not as much as you would think.
Now, as far as the angles they get, they do the thing where, obviously they have to have cameras in different places. So they put them on their, they're wearing the hats that, have the lamps on them.
The miner helmets.
Yeah. They put cameras there so we can, get literal first-person point of views. I think that worked a lot better than it has before.
Definitely.
Where you actually, it doesn't do the shakiness too much, but it does it enough to be realistic. And there's tiny little creepy things where it's not just up close and personal, the weird ghost people or black cloak guy. Those little they point them out, obviously, but it's one of those things where it's kind of something you would just walk by or notice and not really think about until you kind of realize it.
Yeah.
They're supposedly in a place that hasn't been inhabited for, hundreds of years, yet there's torches that are, freshly lit. And there's a body there that's been in its tomb for 600 years but hasn't decomposed. Just little things like that. Every now and then there's a scene reminiscent of the Goonies, which is kind of funny. I don't know if it's intentional or not, but but yeah, this is definitely like I said, I didn't really see any of the advertisements, but I'm sure it's a lot better than it probably looked in like trailers.
Yeah.
And like I said, when you look at the credits, like it's being compared. A lot of people love The Descent. It's got like a big following, but so, as someone like me who didn't like The Descent, on top of it being from the director of Quarantine, it seems like a recipe for disaster. But they managed to somehow bring these things together and make it something really effective. This is definitely. I think I feel about this the way most people probably felt about The Descent.
I can say that.
Maybe this actually might make me want to watch The Descent again. Maybe I don't know. Maybe.
I love the marketing for it too. I love the fact that everything is upside down too. I think that's great because it plays into the title of the movie.
And I won't say too much, but I will say that this is one of those movies. I always love when this happens because it shows you that the movie's been able to really engross you. This was one of those movies where when I knew like it was getting into the last 10 minutes, there was so much shit going through my head of what I thought the ending might be.
Oh, yeah.
And my mind managed to imagine, like, really, really out there things that seemed plausible places for this movie to go. Yeah, I can see... this might be one of those movies where the ending gets complained about a lot.
I can see that.
But I think it's fine. Like I said, at the very least, it gets you, like, really, really trying to guess where in God's name it's going. And I thought the outcome was kind of... People will probably be underwhelmed, especially if you were thinking some of the shit I was thinking it might have been.
Oh, yeah.
But when you look back on it, it's kind of fitting, I guess. So, yeah. We actually have another good horror movie, thankfully.
It's been a long time, too.
Yeah. So I would say fans of the genre will... This is something that they'll finally take to. Without having to... They'll actually love it without feeling like they're obliged to, just because they like the genre. It's something they can like without trying to. Is what I'm saying. Our second movie is The November Man. Maybe you haven't even heard of this. I don't know. Were the trailers that...
No.
No?
I don't remember putting it on many things.
I remember seeing a couple of advertisements on YouTube, like on the side and like the ad videos.
Oh yeah.
And it was just Pierce Brosnan sitting in a car pointing a gun. Okay. So what it is we have a little bit of Bond here. It was basically being called a discount Bond movie.
Yes.
You have a little bit of Bond. You have a little bit of Bourne. You have a little bit of Luc Besson.
Wow, too many B's there.
Yeah. You have, there was another one that came to mind, but I forgot what it was. There's a little Taken in there.
A little?
Taken kind of falls under Besson. He, like, wrote and produced.
Yeah.
But, you know, you get what I mean. Okay, let me see if I can piece this together. The plot's very, very basic, but so basic I'm not even sure I fully grasped it.
Yeah. Okay.
So it starts... And obviously he's on a mission. He worked for, what was it, the CIA or something?
Yes.
Okay. It's going to be one of those.
Yeah, it is.
And he's got this guy that's basically, I don't know if he's training him or if he's like a mentor to him or whatever. And they're on this mission, and it turns into the beginning of SWAT. If you remember SWAT, the movie starts with a hostage situation. And this is how interesting The November Man is. I'm going to talk about SWAT for a second. There's a hostage situation, and Colin Farrell's down there with them, and Jeremy Renner's in the rafters getting ready to pick somebody off. He's prepared to. And he ends up shooting an innocent person. And that puts a rift in their relationship, and they go separate ways. That's basically what happens with Pierce Brosnan and this guy. Trouble is Jeremy Renner just wounded a hostage, whereas this guy has killed a kid by accident. Like I said, I was reminded again of the beginning of Face Off. So, we cut to 5 years later, and it's Pierce Brosnan driving in a car. It felt just like the 9 years later shot from GoldenEye. And speaking of GoldenEye, Brosnan has a partner at the beginning of this movie that is also killed in this prologue. And sometimes he'll look out windows and longingly say her name. Bond fans will be amused to know that her name was Natalia. So anyway, a new thing has come up involving Russians. Because you can't have a generic spy movie without Russian villains.
Exactly.
And there's like a president-elect there that's like kind of behind the whole thing. And then there's something about his daughter being kidnapped. And then he's butting heads again with his former dude he was mentoring. There's a whole lot going on here, but nothing really that interesting.
Nope.
The most interesting thing about the movie is how hilarious it is.
Yes.
Unintentionally, of course. It's worth noting that one of the higher-ups is played by, well, let me start from the beginning. The guy came up, we were basically doing a Mystery Science Theater thing, because nobody else was in there, of course.
It was awesome.
And so the guy came up, and I was like, they couldn't get Will Patton for this? The guy kind of looks like him. And the movie kind of keeps going, and we keep cutting back to this guy. And I just kept calling him Discount Will Patton. And then at some point, he takes his glasses off. And I know how Lois Lane feels now. He took his glasses off, and lo and fucking behold, it was Will Patton the whole time. I mistook Will Patton for Will Patton. It's because he had hair. Normally he doesn't up here.
Mm.
But anyway. So yeah.
That was funny.
And we had just a whole bunch of discount actors. There was a guy that kept reminding me of Terry O'Quinn from Lost and The Stepfather. So I just called him Terry O'Quinn through the whole movie, and I was telling you, I'm going to confuse myself later in life and actually believe Terry O'Quinn was in this movie. We have Olga Kurylenko, who thinks she's in a Luc Besson movie because she keeps putting red wigs on. That stop here, of course. And she's basically the helpful eye candy. Kind of somewhat doing Anne Hathaway's thing from Get Smart, only without comedy.
Somewhat.
Now, here's the weird thing about this movie. We have all this shit going on. They throw another kind of somewhat plot at us. This younger character, the guy that we have no idea whose side we're supposed to be on. That's another obstacle. Are they both villains? Are they both heroes? Is the young guy the villain? Is Brosnan the villain? There's no distinction whatsoever. And not in the good, oh, everybody's untrustworthy thing. No. This movie just doesn't know who its characters are.
Nope.
This younger guy, there's a girl that lives next door to him in his apartment building that basically keeps trying to get on his dick. And she goes to desperate measures to this. She answers the door in a robe. She lets the cat out so he can bring it back. And I was like, okay, clearly she's a spy and she's trying to get to him. No. She is nothing. The movie just thought this should have a love story with this character. In the middle of all the other shit that's going on. And it's just like, if you'll please excuse this Pierce Brosnan spy movie, let's have this meet cute in an apartment building movie. And that's all that plot is. It goes nowhere.
Yeah.
Like, she's taken out of the movie. But she can obviously make a return. But she just doesn't. The movie knows how unimportant that plot point was, so it just stopped.
They gave up on it midway through because they realized how unimportant it was.
It's like it wasn't supposed to... It's like the guy wrote it in the script and he was like, oh, this doesn't belong. I'll just take it out. as soon as I write this stuff. And he just forgot and left it in there.
Happens sometimes.
And you get first, obviously, you get every possible action movie ripoff from other movies you can possibly have. You also just have every cliche in general.
Yeah.
The stupid stuff. This is one of those movies where when you, like, cut the gas and you form a gas puddle underneath the car, and then you can drive a distance and then shoot the gas puddle, and then the car explodes.
It's like something that's been disapproved on Mythbusters.
Not only that, not only does that making it explode seem stupid, it's in a parking lot, and none of the other cars around it are damaged at all. It's in its own explosion bubble that doesn't harm anything except the car itself. We were calling things left and right.
Yes.
There was, we were talking about the rating, and you said, well, maybe they'll, like, throw some tits into it, because they usually do that if they have an R rating, just because. Yeah. And I said, yeah, there's probably a strip club scene somewhere. It was maybe 15 minutes later.
Yep.
And then there was the scene where they're having the big phone call where it's like, oh, I know you, and oh, I know you, and they're running around talking to each other while doing their separate missions. And they're taunting each other, and you turned to me and you said, sooner or later he's going to call him old man. I don't think it was 30 seconds later.
Nope.
Because I had said, no, that he'll wait till the confrontation at the end.
No, it's not that type of movie.
And then, like, 15 seconds later, old man.
And I'm like, yes.
Let's see. There's a chase scene in this. First off, we're introduced to another villain. This woman assassin that I don't remember killing anybody. Maybe one person she, like, beat up. But they build her up to be, like, this Xenia Onatopp type. But she doesn't really do anything.
Nope.
And then, here's what happens. She and Olga Kurylenko meet. Yeah, Olga Kurylenko, by the way. They put a real Bond girl in the movie. They get into this chase. Okay? And we're about halfway into this chase. And it cuts to something else. And I was like, well, this is poorly edited. We're just going to cut right in the middle of that chase to something else. When they cut back, it's going to look really bad, and the suspense will be gone. Worse, they just forgot that chase.
Yep.
It never cut back to it. And they were just in separate places in the next scene. Apparently she got away from her.
Somehow.
Oh, God. There's a really funny scene at the end where they basically pick up where they left off. Kurylenko's sitting at a computer, just, like, typing up, like, an article. And the woman shows up, and they do their big chase. And then after the chase ends, she just casually goes back to the computer and keeps typing where she left off.
She has a deadline. She has to meet it.
What was the point of that character? Because all it did was inconvenience the main female character. That's all she was there to do.
That's what her point was.
She didn't put her life in danger. She mildly inconvenienced her every now and then. That's it. And they build her up to be the big badass assassin type. And you know what? She doesn't even really get killed.
No.
She gets knocked out. Kevin McAllister could have taken this woman out.
Yeah.
With the way she was taken out. Oh my God. It got to a point to where we saw a character in this movie that had to be questioned. So we saw a couple of pictures of him. And it was basically Robbie Coltrane's character in Goldeneye, basically. He came back in The World Is Not Enough, but it was the way he played him in Goldeneye. They went to question him, but when I saw his picture, he's like this big Mark Boone Jr. type guy.
Yeah.
And he looks like really drunk and wild in the picture they have of him. And I was like, oh my God, I can't wait to meet this guy. This movie was boring the shit out of me so much that I saw a guy in a picture and said, I can't wait to see this guy.
Yes.
So he goes to the club, the strip club I was talking about, to interrogate this guy. And I was really, really excited because I was like, if this guy's anything like he looked in the picture. It's like when you see a model and you're about to meet her, you're like, I hope she really lives up to the picture.
Yes.
But it's this fat drunk guy I'm looking for. That was the most enticing thing in this movie, was waiting to see if that guy's personality was anything like it conveyed in the picture they had of him.
He had a lot to live up to. There's some pretty goofy pictures.
And he didn't really, unfortunately.
No, he didn't.
He came back, and I was like, oh, please do something spontaneous.
Something wacky.
But no, that guy was just kind of there to be an informant. It's one of those movies where apparently wherever they are is really important, because every time they change location, it comes up on the screen like in little computer typing, and it makes that little yeah, you see that in a lot of movies, and I always say the same thing. Number one, doesn't matter where we are, and number two, as soon as everybody reads that, they're gonna forget about it anyway. Because that's not what's important.
This movie could have taken place in Louisiana, it wouldn't have mattered.
But every time the scene changes, we get that, oh, by the way, we're here now. So, and yeah, why does it even matter where we are if we're only going to stay there for 30 seconds? But, you know, fine, that's an old cliche. And the show, The Following with Kevin Bacon, that show, I only watched the first season, that show drove me insane with that shit. Every time the scene changed, we got the location of where they were.
They didn't say their names and their occupations or anything like a documentary.
Like Into the Storm.
Yes. Ugh.
Documentarian Storm Chaser. And it's one of those movies where you can tell it's trying so hard to be an action movie. There is a scene at the beginning of this movie where one car... Number one, the cars seem like they're intentionally looking for cars to crash into during chases.
Yes.
And I shit you not. Okay? You remember stuff like What's Up, Doc? Where they had the glass panel and stuff like that? That was later spoofed in Wayne's World 2.
World 2.
There is a scene in this movie where a car runs into a truck, and on the back of this truck was just panes of glass. For no reason. Just to crash right into that truck and have glass go everywhere. Which, if you're generous enough, that'll happen with just a normal car. You don't have to add glass. There's already glass in cars in case you forgot. Whatever. And you can tell that the director's like an experienced director too. He's the guy that did, Dante's Peak comes to mind. He did a lot of movies though.
That explains his star.
So I think they did a few movies together. This is one of those movies where you can kind of see them, like, he's trying desperately to have those little directorial touches that add to the coolness. Like, there's one scene where the younger guy is on the roof and he's got a sniper rifle and he's running to his place. But we don't watch him run. The camera watches his shadow against the wall as he runs, and it's just like... Great inspired direction there. You're real stylish now.
I love the editing in this movie too.
Yeah. So, yeah, there's one scene where there's two dudes there, and Brosnan comes in and just starts hitting them with something. And every time he hits them, there's an obvious cut. So yeah. I also got a little bit of The Debt in there. I don't know if anybody remembers that. It was that movie with Helen Mirren and Jessica Chastain, and had like the shit like this, only it was more enticing. And I feel so bad for Brosnan because number one, he was a producer on it, and number two, he's been doing press like crazy for it, and he seemed really enthusiastic. So when I went and I was thinking about that, and I was like, man, I really, really hope that enthusiasm comes out. And you can tell he's like really, really throwing himself into it.
He's trying.
He's doing the screaming. He's got a great delivery of bullshit.
Which is going to be a new inside joke between us for a long time now.
Yeah. But you know, it's just kind of funny. Yeah. There's one scene where he breaks up an interrogation. And he's got his gun drawn, and he runs into the room. And it's supposed to be super, super dramatic, as he's shown up, and he's here to kick some ass. But his entrance, he doesn't kick down a door. He doesn't bust through a wall. There are these little foam flaps. And he just kind of slips into the room.
This was an interrogation scene, and it seems like this was like a maximum security place this guy was being interrogated in, and we find out that it's just 2 pieces of foam.
It's in one of those, like, storage crates.
Yeah.
When they were on the inside, I was like, this looks like one of those giant storage crates. They actually did end up being in one. It's like it was trying to be the end of Lethal Weapon 2 or something.
So he could have escaped any time. All he had to do was overpower the girl, and he could have bombed out, but no, he didn't do that.
And about those directorial touches of where this guy really was like, I'm making an action movie here. Everything goes into slow-mo.
Oh my god.
There are some scenes in this movie that I think could have been cool. There's one particular scene where a dude's on a motorcycle, and Brosnan has, like, I don't know what, it's like the size of a fire extinguisher, and apparently the weight of one, too. Mm-hmm. And the guy drives by on the motorcycle, and Brosnan brings it around, hits him in the face with it, and the dude flies off of it.
I thought it was a trash can, actually.
Maybe, I don't know. But, that was kind of funny in a way of, like, that's kind of funny how he took that guy out, and a little badass. But the problem with that is they made it hilarious in the wrong way by making it go into slow-mo when this happened. And that happens a lot.
Yeah.
Like, the action in this movie may not have been that bad, but they insisted on the slow-mo so much, it just made everything really funny in the worst way. So,
how are general audiences going to take to this?
It'll just be throwaway to them. Like, they'll probably see it, they'll probably take it as a normal spy movie and go, well, that wasn't bad. It's not something they'll tell their friends about.
Are they going to laugh at it, too?
When they're asked about it, they'll say, oh, that's how I would imagine a general audience would feel about it. Just, like, whatever. They won't hate it. I don't even hate it, really. It's too entertaining.
It's not a hateable movie, but I mean, it's something that's so... I mean, I don't like that so bad it's good cliche, but still, I mean, it's one of those things that it's going to be quickly forgotten, but it is funny in the wrong way.
So, yeah. It'll be good. Like, get some alcohol when it's on TV, like when it's on HBO or Showtime or something, and get some friends together, and it'll be a good time for you.
It'll be one of the... I can see it being one of those movies, but the only clientele going to it right now are the senior citizens. At least around where I am.
I just feel bad for Brosnan because he seemed really... I mean, maybe it's because he was just doing press for a movie he produced, but, I mean, he did seem, like, genuinely enthusiastic about it. They did that thing on Fallon where they tried to get a huge reaction by having Brosnan play Goldeneye with him. It only lasted for about 30 seconds, and Brosnan had no idea what he was doing and said he hadn't played it for years, but...
Translation, never played at all.
It's just, that's unfortunate. Alright, our next movie is, What If? Which was originally called The F Word. I think it still is, like in Canada or something.
Yes.
Okay. And it's a romantic comedy starring Daniel Radcliffe and Zoe Kazan. This will probably sound really, really familiar. Just in general, if you've ever seen a romantic comedy, this movie will be familiar to you. It's not necessarily a bad thing, but just as far as the story is concerned. We have Daniel Radcliffe, who's just gotten out of a bad relationship. He caught his girlfriend banging some other dude. And it's always really, really awkward when he occasionally runs into her.
That was random.
Well, I was seeing if there was anything else in it.
Alright.
And then we have Zoe Kazan, who is in a happy relationship with Rafe Spall. But there's something missing from her life, and she doesn't know what it is. And she's an animator. So we get this opening sequence with all these really screaming, I'm a fucking quirky indie movie, right in your face, when we have these little animations for our little credit sequence. And every now and then, the animations kind of jump off the paper and then into her life to show how she's feeling. There's like a melancholy butterfly or a happy unicorn or some bullshit. And And as luck would have it, these two meet at a party. I want to say it was Adam Driver's party.
Yes.
Somebody's party. Zoe Kazan and Adam Driver's characters are cousins.
Yes.
They're related somehow. And they meet at this party, and they really, really hit it off. They're great. She doesn't mention Rafe Spall at all. She just goes on about, hey, yeah, I'm meeting you, and this is wonderful. And he's like, hey, I'm meeting you, and this is wonderful. And they do a back and forth thing. There's this little indie quirky thing where they use the words on the refrigerator to make sentences, and he's like, oh, love sucks. And she's like, oh, love's awesome. But regardless, they get along perfectly. And he, I think he walked her home, as you would do.
Correct.
And everything's wonderful and everything's great. And he's like, hey, I've made a new friend. This is great. And she's like, well, boyfriend. And he's like, oh.
Yeah.
And I could probably stop right here and the rest of the movie. To an extent. The basic outline of it. And you're right. It goes in every direction you expect it to at some point. But the thing about it is the stuff in between. Mainly the dialogue and stuff like that. For starters, the thing that really kept this movie from dying horribly was the appeal of Daniel Radcliffe. I'm not a huge Zoe Kazan fan. Then again, it might be because the first movie I ever saw her in, besides Revolutionary Road, was The Exploding Girl.
Yeah.
Which was an excruciating experience. And she was also in Meek's Cutoff, so she's just in a lot of excruciating movies. It might not be her personally.
It was Ruby Sparks, you liked it.
Yeah, which she wrote, so. Yes. I think she also wrote The Exploding Girl, though, so. I might be wrong, I don't remember, but. Regardless, I prefer just to forget that movie altogether, please. It just so happens that Rafe Spall, who works for the United Nations,
yeah,
has to leave town on business. So, when you know it, she's like, hey, my boyfriend's not around for a while. In fact, he's in a whole different country. Let's hang out all the time. Nothing will go wrong. And so they do, and like I said, you pretty much know what happens. The weird thing, I say the dialogue makes it, it's one of the things that rises above the story itself, but most of the time it's great, especially Adam Driver's character. The scenes with Adam Driver's character are the best in the movie, I think, because the way he and Daniel Radcliffe work together in a scene just really, really... The scenes were hilarious. Like, there was... I'm going to talk about this for a second. This thing about me not watching trailers. What I do when the trailers are on, if you haven't heard me talk about this yet, is I just close my eyes and I hear them go by. And normally I just kind of forget what I hear after a while. When we saw Chef, this trailer was on it.
Yep.
And the very first thing they show in the trailer is the scene where Adam Driver pulls the nachos out of the stove and sets them in front of him and says, I just had sex and I'm about to eat nachos. This is the greatest day of my life. As soon as I heard that, up until I saw this movie, I wondered where the fuck that quote came from.
Yeah, exactly.
And I didn't know when we went in either. When it happened, I was like, that's where that line came from. And then it made me laugh even harder because I realized that's what they chose to start the trailer with. That's hilarious.
Yeah, to grab the people right away.
Obviously, Adam Driver's really made a name for himself with girls. And he showed up in Francis Holland, some bullshit. But,
yes.
He's kind of doing this. He's in a lot of big movies, too. He had one scene in Lincoln.
Yeah.
But he's really taking off. He also had an Emmy nomination for Girls recently, I think. Yeah, those scenes are the best in the movie. But then we have these scenes. They're a good... feeling about Zoe Kazan the way I do, they do make an appealing couple.
Yeah.
More or less. But some of their conversations are a little too... You can see the screenwriter writing. And, God bless him for thinking this. Because when you have a story like this really has to be your train of thoughts so you don't fuck up. It's obvious he was saying, okay, how do I rate the dialogue between these two without being really, really, really cliche? I've got to think of something really, really far out there for them to talk about that won't be them going through the motions of a normal romantic comedy. I'm not sure that's the conversation I would have chosen, but long story short, basically they talk about, it reminded me, I don't know why, maybe because they had just seen a movie, that must be why. It was the scene in True Romance where they go see the Street Fighter marathon and then they go have pie. They go see they both end up in The Princess Bride, and then they go out to have like coffee. And the conversation is how full Elvis's bowels were when he died. And that branches into a whole conversation. I understand where he's coming from. I understand you had to sit down and say, what kind of conversation could they have that's not some cliche romance bullshit? It's certainly a conversation that's never been done before, but if you're trying to be romantic, I don't know. There are a couple of shit-related conversations for some reason.
Yeah.
But the whole thing's not like that, though. So,
no, thankfully not. Teaches you how to make fool's gold.
Yeah. So, and there's this thing, with the Princess Bride thing. There was a thing there where I was wondering for a while how many movies were going to be featured in this. Because there's this funny scene where, obviously he doesn't really have a life now that he's out of his relationship. He just wants to sulk. So, he has a job babysitting his nephew. And they're not allowed to watch scary movies. So, we have that thing where we cut, and of course not only are they watching a scary movie, they're watching John Carpenter's The Thing.
Yes.
It's not like Halloween, they're watching the original The Thing, they're watching fucking Carpenter's movie. One of the gruesome scenes, too. Yeah, speaking of that, this movie does kind of fight its MPAA rating sometimes.
Yeah, definitely.
With the dialogue and the fact that they show footage from The Thing that I think got The Thing its R rating to begin with. But not so much. Despite the original title, the F word is never said.
No.
I guess that's irony.
I'm kind of shocked, actually. It seemed like it would be fitted somewhere.
Given that was the original title, that may have been their point. I
think
guess.
it was.
So yeah.
Oh, the F word is friend. That makes sense.
Okay. So, one thing that they did, speaking of that, one thing that they did do really well here, and I guess this is a good thing for Zoe Kazan that I can say. First off, before I say that she did this well, I do want to say, for a lot of the movie, I thought she was kind of miscast. I mean, even though she does the indie bullshit, like the animations, and her emotions, that fit her and everything, but what the character's supposed to be, the unattainable pretty girl, Zoe Kazan does not come to mind for that characterization.
Does another Zoe come to mind for you?
Oh, God. No, then this would have starred Jake Johnson instead of Daniel Radcliffe, and it would have been a disaster.
No.
So, here's the thing. I like what they did with the character, and what I liked her, like I said, I guess you can credit her performance too. This mixed messages thing. In any other movie, it basically would have been, oh, clearly she feels something for him, but she's not showing because she has a boyfriend, and oh, they're being kept apart, how sad. They want so badly to be together, but oh no. What this movie does is makes it, for a while, makes it ambiguous how she feels about him.
Yeah.
Because there are some times where we're in his position where we're like, okay, is she sending a message right now or is she not? And it's not totally, completely out front.
No.
So, like the dressing room thing, I would say it would be a mixed message for her to say, hey, come in and help me get this dress off. But they do the thing where she keeps telling him to keep his eyes closed. And she's really strict about it. So that kind of says, Well, she wants him to take her dress off, but she is very strict about him not looking, so... and most of the time it's like that. So I like that they did that. Because that could have been... It would have been excruciating if it was totally obvious that she, liked him back, and we were just waiting for the race ball thing to end. And speaking of him, it is also interesting to me how many types of humor that this movie uses. It may not always work, and it may be odd combinations, especially given how seriously they take the romance aspect of it. Some scenes in this movie are really serious.
Mm-hmm.
But you have, 4 different kinds of humor working here. You have the quirky, indie, awkward humor, oh my god, this is, so awkward kind of humor. And then you have, there's some dirty humor, like some of Adam Driver's dialogue.
Yes.
And sex-related dialogue. Like I said, then you have, the bathroom humor, the, Elvis's bowels and eating shit was in there or something. And then there's a scene that's just flat out slapstick, where we meet Rafe Spall for the first time, and he gets, juice in his eye that burns, and then he gets hit with a door and flies out the kitchen window onto the concrete below, and for a split second I thought they had killed him. They do that funny shot where you see his hand twitching. And like I said, it seems like an odd combination for all these to kind of be in the same movie. It's kind of hard to believe some of the skinny dipping scene. It's kind of hard to believe the skinny dipping scene and how serious that got is in the same movie as Rafe Spall hitting the concrete with his hand twitching. So yeah, it does feel a little uneven, and it's very, very obvious from the get-go what direction that's going to go in. There's the scene where you have the misunderstanding and somebody has to get on a plane before it's too late. All that bullshit, but the stuff in the middle kind of makes up for everything and makes it likable. So Daniel Radcliffe really, really helps this movie because he really brings something appealing to this character. This character could have been somebody you just wanted to punch in the face over and over and over again, but the way Radcliffe played him made him somebody that could really be in this situation. That you can actually feel for. Because usually the guys in these movies are it's no fucking wonder she's... But, no. So, thankfully we had that. So, yeah. It probably doesn't sound like it, but that's actually a recommendation for the most part. Just every now and then, you have those things that are just I guess.
Well,
the subplot with the sister
yeah,
seemed kind of misplaced, or completely unnecessary.
I will state right now before you get going, obviously I have obviously I don't talk about personal things on this channel, and I'm not going to, but let me just say that this movie is something I really enjoyed. I loved it from the second I saw it, and a lot of people are comparing it to 500 Days of Summer. I wouldn't call it, I wouldn't go that far, but I mean, it's on its way. And it's very identifiable. We'll just go with that word for the sake of argument.
If that's something that you don't like and that comparison scares you, despite the animations and the fact that it stars Zoe Kazan, this one isn't as much on the quirky factor as 500 Days of Summer.
No, it's not.
So...
That feels more indie than this did.
Yeah, you don't have to worry about that.
I kind of love this movie, and it's one of the better ones I've seen this year, but that's just me.
Our next movie is Magic in the Moonlight, Woody Allen's new movie. Which is either assigned to go awesome or oh shit. It's hard to tell.
Could go either way.
Yeah. Is it going to be Midnight in Paris or is it going to be To Rome with Love? Is it going to be what's another bad one? Is it going to be The Purple Rose of Cairo or is it going to be September?
15 people just got that reference.
Yeah. I always get them confused. The Woody Allen movie is September. There's a Courtney Cox journalism movie called November. I get those confused sometimes.
That's interesting.
Yeah. Okay. Magic in the Moonlight is a very interesting story, actually. It feels very... I'll get to that in a second, actually. We have this magician, played by Colin Firth, who does the thing where he dresses as a Chinese guy, and everybody thinks he's Chinese, but it's all a costume, and it's all, for show. So nobody really knows, like, his real identity. He's basically like if a superhero was a magician.
I want that movie made now, Hollywood.
And he meets up with his old friend. What happens was, obviously since Firth is a magician, he can basically sit in an audience and point out everybody's tricks.
Yes.
He does what Hugh Jackman likes to do in The Prestige. So this old friend comes to meet him and says, there's this family who's being visited by this young woman who's under the impression that she's a medium. And it seems really legit. So we were thinking you could go down there and basically prove that she's a fake. So he says, fuck it. All fine. And no, that's, simplifying it.
Obviously not in those words. Could have been, but no.
So, I don't think in 1925 they were saying fuck it.
Probably not.
So, this is Berlin of 1925, I think, is what it said. So, yeah, did you hear that, November Man? Only show your locations once. So, he goes down there, and we meet the medium, and she's Emma Stone. So when they said beautiful young woman, they weren't kidding.
Yeah.
And she's there with her mother, who's Marcia Gay Harden. It's worth noting that, despite being a Woody Allen movie, the cast is really small. Like, usually in Woody Allen movies, you have, like, a whole bunch of recognizable names, and then some semi-recognizable names in the smaller parts. Sometimes really recognizable names in the smaller parts.
Yeah.
But here, the cast is really small. You have Colin Firth and Emma Stone, then you have, Marcia Gay Harden and Eileen Atkins, and Hamish Linklater. And that dude from Tinker Tailor is his first friend that brought him here. And that's about it.
Yeah.
And it's not totally recognizable names, for the most part, except for Firth and Stone, and to an extent, Marcia Gay Harden. Is there somebody I'm missing? I think that might be it.
For recognizable names, that would be it.
Well, and of course, naturally, despite the fact that he has a fiancée, he starts to have feelings for Emma Stone's character as the movie goes on, while still trying to prove that she's a fraud. Even though, as the movie goes on and on, the more she starts to convince him that she really is. I wasn't sure what to think of this one going in, because, just like I said, and it's not just me, I think it's like everybody, because he's made so many movies. He's made like a movie a year since the 70s.
At least one.
Obviously, Woody Allen's gonna be hit and miss with a resume that long. But I did really like this.
Yeah, same here.
And it's not often... For the longest time, I just flat out didn't really care for Woody Allen movies. But as I got older, and when Midnight in Paris came out, I went back and revisited a lot of them. And there's still, ones that are really good, and then ones that are not so much. And only every now and then, to me, is there kind of a really, really good one. And it's interesting to note that this one kind of came out quietly.
Yeah.
Like, it didn't have, like, when Midnight in Paris came out, the raves were, like, immediate. Or when Blue Jasmine came out, everybody jumped on it immediately. But then every now and then you have, like, a To Rome with Love or a Whatever Works. And just one that goes by that nobody even really notices. And they don't even really acknowledge the fact that, like, oh, another Woody Allen movie's out. Okay. It's kind of weird to me that this one, of all of the more recent ones, will be one that just kind of...
went by.
You didn't really hear anything. You didn't hear anything really overly bad, but nobody really jumped on it either. It was just kind of another one that's just going to kind of slip by. But I thought this really felt like really classic Woody Allen. I thought this felt like.
Oh yeah, definitely.
This was like something he would have made like in like his prime and like maybe the 90s. I would say I wouldn't. It's kind of hard to imagine it farther back, but I would say like Allen in the 90s would have made this. because you have, well, okay. First off, you have the two leads. And number one, Woody Allen had recently made news for a couple of reasons. There's the racism thing, and there's the, Mia Farrow's daughter thing. So people kind of look at it a little funny when Woody Allen makes a movie where the love interests are Colin Firth and Emma Stone. Emma Stone might as well be an infant. Not that Colin Firth's that old, but
yeah,
obviously there's an age difference. Now I don't want to guess Colin Firth's age because I might insult him. But I've got a number floating around in my head. I think he might be, but I don't want to accidentally overshoot it.
Colin Firth is right now getting ready to click that dislike button, hinging on your every word.
That'd be fucking hilarious if Colin Firth watched these videos.
I'd love that.
He's too polite. He'd be like, "Well, I don't quite agree with that at all."
Let's watch dogs playing poker. Cats and pianos.
It's hilarious to imagine what Colin Firth does in private.
He watches cats playing piano on YouTube.
First off, I happen to think that Colin Firth has been getting a bad rap a lot lately.
Oh, definitely.
It seems like, shock surprise, ever since he won his Oscar, everybody wants to hate on him now. Go figure.
That's what people do nowadays for some reason.
Because he had a really great, he wasn't there very much, but he had a really great part in Tinker Tailor. And then ever since then, people just kind of been hating on him. Like, every time he makes a movie now, people are just like, oh my god, he was so bad. Like, I reviewed most of them. We have Gambit, which obviously is bad, but he's not in it. Arthur Newman, which I thought he was good in. Devil's Knot, he was fine. People hate him when he tries an American accent is the problem. I don't really, The Railway Man he was good in.
Yeah.
I don't get where, well, I know where it's coming from because he won an Oscar and, that's where you start hating people. But, I think he's still relatively consistent in his movies, and I really liked him here. He's really got that Firth charm that we know from, like, Bridget Jones or the Pride and Prejudice miniseries.
Yeah.
Which I never watched, but I can guess. There was, like, a whole point in his career where he played nothing but Darcy's. No, I think that, classical Firth charm is here in this movie, and it really, he was the perfect casting choice, I thought.
I agree.
Because I keep hearing things like, he's not very good. Some dumb shit I read somewhere said it's one of the worst performances of the year. They must have only seen, like, 3 movies this year. I can name, like, 20, probably off the top of my head, that are worse than his performance in this.
Yes.
Which I don't think is bad at all.
No.
And then you have Emma Stone, who is just her wonderful self, always.
Yes.
The only problem I had with her in this isn't necessarily her fault. Okay, when you look at, like, the poster, you look at stills of her, like, when she's wearing the hat and she's got the hair, you can buy that she's somebody from 1925.
Yeah.
My only problem, and it's really not that bad, like, it's not, like, too distracting or anything, just every now and then it just kind of felt like it. I don't know if it's because of the parts she's played before, like Easy A or something, but when you actually see her in the movie, like, talking and just, doing her thing, it's kind of hard to look at somebody like Emma Stone and try to imagine she's from 1925. She's got kind of a modern way about her that kind of stuck out every now and then.
She looks a little bit like Daisy Buchanan somewhat, too.
Like I said, when you see, like, stills or the poster, I could buy it.
Yeah.
But when she's actually there, like I said, I don't know if it's just because, like, I'm thinking of the character in Easy A, which was as modern as you can get. I don't know. But like I said, it wasn't through the whole time, and she's not bad in the movie either.
No.
The main thing, like, she's not bad at all. The problem would be miscasting. But, she's fine. It's not that bad. One thing I liked is, once again, just like whatever we're talking about ambiguity. I did like the fact that for a while they don't really lean one way or the other. Like, the whole plot is that he's going there to expose her as a fraud. So you kind of think, okay, she's gonna seem... And she does seem really, really bad at it. Like, whenever she, like... He says something that she can't really think of something for, she does the... There's a cloud, and I can't see anything.
That's like a magic 8 ball.
It's like... But then there are times where she seems really, really legitimate and genuine. So there are those times where she comes off really fake, and then there's times where it's like, oh my god, this might be real. And for the most part, they play with that ambiguity back and forth, and you never really know until we find out which is which. I did like that about it.
Mm.
But, because it could have kind of done... I think it could have derailed pretty easily if we found out relatively early which was which. But... I like that it's kind of a mystery, and we're trying to figure it out with him as it goes.
It doesn't go into leap of faith territory where you find out right away what's going
on. The cinematography, I can't believe has not been talked about more. It looks like I said. That's another thing I was talking about. It feels like such a classic Woody Allen movie. The shots in this movie are fantastic. And also, not just talking about specific, shots that look like they could be still images. There is a long take at the end of this movie that is fantastic. And it's so subtle, you probably don't even think about it when you're watching it. But it was like towards the end of the scene I realized, holy shit, they haven't cut this whole time. It's this ending scene with Firth and Eileen Atkins where it starts with him on the phone in the other room. And then he comes in and he sits down at the table with her. And he's basically coming to terms with the fact that he and Emma Stone aren't exactly a match made in heaven on the surface. They've got a lot of, differences, and she is what she is, and he is what he is. I don't think they came right out with the age, but I'm pretty sure that was a factor as well. And he's just going through all the reasons why they probably wouldn't work. And then he just keeps talking about her. And then you can kind of see him, he's like, well, I have a fiance, so there's that. And then he kind of goes from, well, that'll never happen and it's over now. And she's, because there's this subplot with her and Hamish Linklater where he's this guy that's always trying to serenade her with a ukulele. She becomes engaged to him. So there's that conflict. And then Firth is sitting here and he's doing the whole, I have a fiance, she has a fiance, this just isn't going to happen. But, there was this, and then there was this. And he kind of starts to come to terms with how he feels about her. And then the scene basically ends with him all but saying, oh my god, I'm in love with her. This whole scene, from him being on the phone to coming and sitting down at the table, and progressing to, this will never happen, to, oh my god, I love her, I gotta get her back, happens all in one shot without a cut. And it's a really great shot. And like I said, it wasn't until the end of the scene I was like, man, he just had a whole character arc right before our eyes in one shot. Which is a huge credit to Firth, too.
Yeah, no lie.
So, I don't know what, the bad rap he's getting is. And the whole thing, like I said, if you want to just get a little, a little bit cheesy, I guess, the whole thing's so romantic.
Yeah.
Normally in love stories, it just kind of happens. Especially in, throwaway Woody Allen movies. It's just like, well, okay, this is happening now. Cue the jazz credits. But you really, despite the fact that it is a little weird that it's Colin Firth and Emma Stone, you somehow still really want to see them together because they had such great chemistry and work together really well. And it's just there was... I know you'll probably hate this, but I thought it was kind of sweet. There was this couple, I never would have expected to see them in a Woody Allen movie, but this kind of older couple that was kind of in the middle of the theater. And it was just this really nice moment where the movie ended, and the ending is one of those, heart-catching romantic things. And when the movie ended and the credits were going, this couple stood up and kissed. And I really liked that happened. I was like, what? It made me realize I thought the movie was already romantic. I was like, wow, the movie just caused that to happen. That's really nice. And, yeah, just like I said, the one thing that really, really brought it out was it just felt so great in that classical way. It felt classically romantic. It felt like a classic Woody Allen. And it just had that feel to it. And I thought everything just really, really worked. And I can't believe it's not getting a better reception than it did.
The problem is the older audience is obviously going to take to it, because it does have that old-time romantic feel, and it really does. But the problem is the people now, this day and age, like the younger audience, are not going to take to it because they're not that type of romantic anymore. That's very few and far between nowadays. They're like, well, that sucked. Let's go watch things blow up. I mean, that's lame. I mean, I enjoy Woody Allen movies. I think they work really well.
This is the kind of romantic that's like, you know, oh my god, I'm so in love. Let's get married on a beach and have wonderful things and everything. And, you know, we live in that day and age where it's like, oh shit, you're knocked up. We better go to the courthouse. You know?
I drag my property around everywhere I go. So she's not more than 15 feet away at all times.
Yeah. So...
The only thing missing from this was like the fade out to a heart in the background saying the end in cursive. I mean, come on.
I would have eaten that up.
I would have loved that. That would be awesome.
So yeah, it's really nice to see a movie like this in the period that we live in.
Yeah.
And we saw this back to back with What If, so it was like two totally different kinds of romances back to back, classical and modern, and that was interesting being able to do that.
What we put in the middle was a little bit different too. So we'll talk about
Magic
that.
and Moonlight is in the middle, but
yeah.
I'm totally out of order in the order we saw them. Speaking of that, our next movie is actually Frank, which I think it was at Sundance. I think that's where it came from. I remember hearing about it a while back and seeing just that still image of Fassbender with the head on.
So random.
Yeah, we'll get into that. I'm kind of going back into What If territory with Frank too, but I'll tell you the plot first in the event that you don't know. I'm still not quite sure how you pronounce his name, but it's yet another movie that stars Brendan Gleeson's son. The star of About Time, and he was Moon and True Grit, and he was in, he had one scene in Calvary. I've seen him a bunch lately, so much that I'm forgetting the rest. But, he wants to be a songwriter, but he's clearly blocked. And the very first scene of the movie is very interesting because he's just standing, like, on the sidewalk, and we're hearing his thoughts as he's trying to piece a song together. And he starts to kind of sing everything that he sees. Like, children playing on the beach, or the woman in the red coat, and the woman in the red coat with the bag, and there's the woman in the blue coat, and does the woman in the blue coat know the woman in the red coat?
It's like Flight of the Conchords.
And he's got nothing. So, oh my god, if this had been a movie about the Flight of the Conchords meeting Frank, this could have been the best movie ever made. That was a missed opportunity.
Indeed it was.
But anyway, and it does kind of feel like a prolonged Flight of the Conchords episode now that I think about it.
It's just what you're saying is what it sounds like.
So he's trying really hard to become a songwriter, and but he doesn't really have a band, and he doesn't really, he's a keyboard player, and he doesn't really have anything to go on. He's just got his own keyboard and his own shitty songs. So one day he's out by the beach, and there's a van there with a band in it, and there's a dude trying to drown himself. So he goes over to the guy standing next to the van, and it's Scoot McNairy. I didn't recognize him at first because he's got a beard and sunglasses. It wasn't until he started talking I realized it was him. And he's just watching this guy trying to drown himself, and the police are trying to pull him out, and it just so happens the guy trying to drown himself is the keyboard player for this band, so they need another one. Go figure. I think it's funny, though, that coincidence just happened to happen. That's the point. Scoot McNairy just says, alright, you're a keyboard player, well, why don't you be at this address at 9 o'clock? And he gets in the van and they just leave. So he goes there, and he meets the band, and the band is, there's Scoot McNairy, obviously, then there's Maggie Gyllenhaal, and then there's, the guy from As Above, So Below, and another girl. And their lead singer is Frank. And Frank is a very weird, mysterious man played by Michael Fassbender, who wears this giant head over his own head and never, ever, ever takes it off. Ever. Nobody in the band has seen him without the head. Nobody. And they're basically... Long story short, their band sucks. They're really, really bad. Like, all they do is make noise, and Frank's lyrics make no sense. And it's hilarious. And they end up bombing because Maggie Gyllenhaal's instrument malfunctions.
That's why?
And they run off the stage. And everybody's like running and the crowd's booing. And Frank just kind of turns around and just stares at Gleason's character. And then he has to be guided out of the room. So we know there's something is like wrong with him. We don't really know what. Even by the end of the movie, we don't really know what, but he's troubled. They're all troubled. Like, some of them, like, we get to know Scoot McNairy's character, and he's talking about how a lot of them were in a psych ward. And it's this really funny scene where he's talking to him, and Scoot McNairy's telling him why he used to be in the psych ward. And just really, really casually, he says, "Yeah, I used to fuck mannequins." And then that's the end of the conversation.
Yeah, where do you go from there?
It's worth noting that Frank is based off a real person that was around in like the 70s, I think, who wore like the head started off as paper mache, and then it was like made into like some kind of fiberglass or something. But the thing about it is, Gleason's character is obsessed with being famous. Whereas the band just pretty much wants to do what they're doing, just going from gig to gig and just doing their thing.
Weekend warriors.
So what they decide to do is they go out to this house, this secluded house, and spend 11 months there. It's a really funny reveal, too, because we don't know how long they're up there, and we keep seeing Gleason's talking to the world and essentially us through his Twitter feed. And he's got a book in front of him, and he's just kind of, it looks like he's reading it, and then his Twitter comes up and says, "Well, we've been out here, practicing and making music. It's been 11 months now," and he puts the book down, and he's grown like a really long beard. But the thing is he wants so badly to be famous, so what he does is, he secretly records them while they're making music and puts it on YouTube. And they end up becoming a sensation because... and they end up getting a gig at South by Southwest.
Nice.
But the problem is they take their stuff very seriously. But given how bad the band is and with the head and everything, they're famous basically because they think Frank's a troll. Which makes perfect sense, really.
Yeah.
This is exactly the kind of thing people would like troll and get famous for.
No lie.
So Gleason becomes obsessed with convincing them to go to South by Southwest. So more or less, he's a very selfish character. So what he's worried about, he's not caring about, Frank's well-being or the band. He's basically just really trying to get out there so he can be famous. But most of the movie is spent with them in this house making the music. And this movie is hilarious. On purpose, it's a comedy. Unlike some of the things we reviewed here.
Yeah.
And it could have gone... Okay, what we were talking about with What If, about the animations, about things being too indie, just on appearance. Frank reminded me of Kablooey, that movie I talked about last year.
Yeah.
Whereas, if you like look at it, like if you look at a poster and you read the description, it just sounds like it's being way too overly quirky and indie, and it's gonna be that bullshit. But much like Kablooey, you have to watch the movie to realize that it's a lot more than that, and not just that on the surface. And they mostly play with it too. Like the thing about it is Frank is really inspiring them because Frank finds everything inspiring. Which could be like, oh god. But there's this scene that's really funny where they, he's talking about in his narration about how Frank is such an odd character. He finds everything inspiring. And we immediately cut to Frank with a bendy straw just going, "I find this inspiring." And it's just that kind of comedy throughout. It does go to a couple of dark places, especially the end. By the end, it's pretty much a full-on drama. But the transition to the drama is kind of seamless, because you know it's getting there eventually, because the movie's not going to leave Frank totally ambiguous, or it would be pointless. So once we go into that, it basically turns more into a drama, but effectively so. It makes Frank a really sympathetic character. And his character's really fascinating to watch, because he just has this way of, despite the fact that he's like wearing the head, he still has a way of charming everybody around him. Like, and he's not too, like, up in arms about it. Like, when, Gleason says, you know, so, can we talk about the head for a second? He's very open to it. He's like, yeah, is it weirding you out? And he's like, well, you know, it's hard to tell how you react to things. And it's like, oh, I'll help you out. And for the rest of the movie, he just starts to say his facial expressions out loud. Like, grateful smile. You know, shit like that. And there's this hilarious scene where he comes up with the idea to make what he calls the most likable song ever. And it's actually called the most likable song ever. And it's basically just him singing very loudly a list of things that he thinks is great. And Gleason, you know, throws in some suggestions, and he's like, oh my god, that is so likable. There's a scene where they're about to get evicted from the house, and a whole family shows up that's supposed to be moving into it. And so Frank says, don't worry, I'll take care of this. And he goes out with the family. We don't know what he's saying or how he's interacting with them, but they end up, like, loving Frank and then just driving away happily and letting them stay there. So, yeah, it's one of those things where if you were to be told the description, like, just by, you know, there's a quirky band, and they're not very good, and the lead singer wears a giant head over his own head, and there's a funny line where Gleason says, I'd love to know what goes on inside that head that's inside that head. It sounds like it might be a really try-hard indie movie, but, it's not like that at all. It's actually a really interesting study of mainly Frank's character, but also Gleason's character, even though he is... So really, Gleason's just kind of there on the surface. He's just a really selfish character that's trying to use Frank to get famous. That's the way I took it, anyway. But he may learn a lesson, and he may not. So, and the comedy is really, you know, inspired and hilarious. I don't recall anything that wasn't funny that was trying to be, which is a really good sign. There's one scene that's very, they obviously took inspiration from Lebowski. You can probably guess what scene that might be. So yeah, this comes highly recommended. So it'd probably be a good double feature with Kablooey, actually. They're not very similar, except that they both wear either giant heads or costumes. But they both have that factor of being, you know, the misunderstood indie movie where you could easily dismiss it on the surface, but when you watch it, you'll probably fall in love with it. Our last movie is got something kind of looming over it. Yeah. That's made it gotten it a little more attention than it probably would have initially. It's A Most Wanted Man, which is based on the novel that I did read by the same guy that wrote Tinker Tailor and the Constant Gardener. Tinker Tailor's coming back a lot too.
Yeah, it really is.
And it's Philip Seymour Hoffman's last leading role. About, he works for this intelligence agency, and they're basically shamed because, they're in the German city that had to do with 9/11, basically. It was like their base or something. And they're basically shamed because they're an intelligence agency that didn't see that coming. So he basically gets the chance to redeem himself when this case comes along of this Russian who has come into the city, who he's like half Chechen and half Muslim, which raises a red flag immediately. He's there to collect his father's fortune, and hopefully to, like, you know, stay there. But Hoffman decides he's going to track him down and prevent what could be another terrorist attack. And we kind of go back and forth between them. He's, if I remember correctly, it's been so long since I read it, and I really don't remember much about it, but I'm pretty sure Hoffman's part has been extremely extended from the book, because I don't remember his character being this front and center. I think the book mainly focused on the Russian character. Who goes into hiding with a friend and takes solace in an activist who is Rachel McAdams, and the banker that's going to help him get his dad's money, who is Willem Dafoe. And then we have Hoffman's character working with this CIA operative who's Robin Wright. And they have this little kind of funny banter thing that they do. As far as the cast, this is it's a small cast, but it's a very nice cast for a movie like this. Now, obviously, you have Willem Dafoe, who's always good, in my opinion. And he's really good here, too. He doesn't have many showy scenes, but he makes the most of what he's got, and that's all you can ask for. McAdams is just kind of there. I don't know if it's she didn't really have anything to work with, or she just maybe wasn't as enthusiastic about this part as she should have been. Like I said, you have Robin Wright. I did love her scenes with, I still don't quite know how to take her as an actress. Like, obviously there's Forrest Gump and stuff, but I've never watched an episode of House of Cards, that might help me, but, she's always been one of those actresses where I've never really known how to take her. She's never really done anything to stand out or make me hate her. She's just kind of there for me, so. But I did like this character in this part for her, though. You have Daniel Bruhl. Some people were a little, I knew from reading the book, and I was like, really, that's it for him? But, yeah, basically coming right off of an almost Oscar nomination by being the guy in the van. He's out of the van sometimes, and he gets to kidnap somebody, but, for somebody who just came off something like Rush, ignoring the Fifth Estate because I didn't do anything.
Yes.
It is a really small part, but it's nice to have that, solid cast there, even in the small parts. Now, as far as Hoffman's concerned, Hoffman's the whole reason to see the movie, obviously.
Oh, yeah.
And this character is really interesting to watch, especially given what happened to him in real life. Because he's playing, obviously, this really world-weary character who's basically seen some shit. And he's really got, you can tell he's really, really got something to strive for. And often plays that desperation really well. But apart from that, and also, because it's a really, really serious, downplayed role, but there's also some really, really deadpan humor there. There were a few people in the theater with us, maybe like 7, which is a lot for a movie like this.
Yeah.
In that theater. His humor is so deadpan that he was saying really funny things, and the audience just wasn't reacting. I think it's because he was so deadpan, they didn't realize what he was saying was supposed to be funny. There's this scene where we first meet Robin Wright's character, and he's introducing them, and he says, like, he introduces her, and then he says, she spies, and she sails. I spy, but I don't sail. I thought that line was hilarious, and it didn't get a reaction at all. Because he just said it, so it was like it was practically like he was just saying, like, a useful piece of information, but he was just, I don't sail, by the way.
There's a lot of performances of his that actually do the deadpan humor really well.
And there have been a lot of movies where Philip Seymour Hoffman has gotten a lot of chances to deliver fuck just the right way.
Yes.
A lot of people go back to pig fuck from The Master. I think this might be his most legendary fuck ever.
Yes, indeed.
There is a moment at the end of this movie where he just gets to do the ultimate Philip Seymour Hoffman fuck delivery.
He revs up before he says it, too. That's the best part of it.
And then we get a follow-up.
Yeah.
It was great.
I loved every second of it.
And I think this would have been, like, obviously it's going to get a lot of attention because it was his last performance. But I think if he had, lived long and done all the great parts I'm sure he would have gotten and would have killed. I think this would have been one of those performances where it was, whenever he was talked about, you'd always have one or two guys say, "What a great performance of his that nobody ever saw was A Most Wanted Man. People need to see more of that performance." I think that would have been what this role was if it weren't his last one.
Agreed.
His last leading one. Now, I was worried going into this, because obviously also because of the author, but just the movie's tone and style in general. It was getting a lot of comparisons to Tinker Tailor. Despite how many times I've referenced it in this video, you probably haven't noticed yet, but I didn't like Tinker Tailor.
Yeah.
I thought it was really, I mean, I understand being, downplayed and having that suspense in there that's really subtle and, and all that, but Jesus Christ, I thought Tinker Tailor was so goddamn dull.
Athens posted a guide to Tinker Tailor on their website. I remember seeing that. It's like, this is what you didn't get.
I mean, I read the book for Tinker Tailor and thought it was fine, but the movie just
didn't deliver.
Oh my god!
I wasn't a fan of it either, but still,
I'm tired now just thinking about it. I was worried this was basically going to be that, but this is basically what I think most people love about Tinker Tailor is what I liked about this movie. So there's something this movie did right that I thought Tinker Tailor didn't. About, the uses of, like I said, the subtle tension where there's not big action scenes or anything like that. There is a nice foot chase through a club that's rather suspenseful, but most of the suspense comes from the tension and the frustration of Hoffman's character and how it always seems close and then there's always an obstacle and so on. But yeah, the main thing about it is there's... Knowing that it was his last leading role and the character he was playing, there just seemed to be kind of something looming over this movie that actually kind of added a greatness to it that I don't think would have been there otherwise. I think it would have been, a good but generic spy movie with a great Hoffman performance in it if it didn't have that. But since it does, there's just something there that kind of, like I said, not only does it add to the movie, but it adds to his character, where it just kind of has this kind of a dark undertone that it gives it that I don't know, it's hard to tell. I don't know if that would have been there already or if that's why it was there or what, but every time his character was on screen, you kind of felt that. It's kind of hard to explain, but I hope I did as good as I could.
A lot more people will get to see this now because they know of its placement in his career, so that's a good thing. Get people out to see the performance.
I think that's it for this video.
Alrighty, so we're going to run through everything one last time, and I'll give you a little preview of what's coming up for next week. So, As Above, So Below.
Yeah.
The November Man.
I said, if it's on cable and you need a laugh, sure. And if nothing else is on. So
there's some infomercial you could be watching, which I'm sure someone will do something funny. Magic in the Moonlight.
Yes, definitely.
What If?
Yeah, sure.
Definite recommendation from me. Frank.
Yes, definitely.
And Most Wanted Man.
Yeah.
Wow, we're...
yeah, it wasn't bad.
Wasn't bad, and we still went normal time, so there you go. So, tomorrow, throwing out a big surprise, we are going to be starting our Academy Awards prediction videos. So, yes, you're getting one in August. You're not going to get one in September, because I'll be in Orlando, so we won't be able to do one in September. But we'll be able to do one in October to make up for it. So, we're only going to skip off September, but other than that, we're going to do one at the end of every month. The big 8 categories, and then as we get into it, we'll do...
To make up for it, we might do one at the beginning of October than the end of October.
That sounds right. Because we got a lot of movies to catch up on. A lot of catch-up videos in October. So that's going to be starting tomorrow, the big 8 categories, and then come later on, and we'll probably add animated and potentially documentary to that list as well as we get closer and closer to the actual ceremony. But that won't be for a while. So that's going to be tomorrow. Ashley is going to be bringing you a Gaming with Ash segment talking about movie and video game connections. And Sunday, brand new verses. I got you into palm of my hand. That's all I need to say about that.
I was kidding when I told you to say that.
I never know when you're kidding. So yes, gangster theme that's going to be very throughout the rest of the year is going to be starting.
If you don't know what two they are based on that, you are an idiot.
Halloween Horror Nights videos coming soon. You obviously saw my last reveal on Halloween the other day, so I'm going to have a couple more of those taken care of. And next week, AJ's Movie Reviews will be returning. Going to be a dead week for Hollywood because it's Labor Day weekend. We don't usually have anything that comes out. There is the Identical, but who knows. AJ, what's coming up next week?
We have Life of Crime, the Jackie Brown prequel starring Mos Def and John Hawkes, which I can't wait for.
Yes.
Are You Here?
You seem so excited.
Yeah, the O.M. Wilson, Galifianakis movie, which I've already seen, as you can probably guess.
Makes me shudder just thinking about it.
From then on, it might be a little unpredictable, so...
The Rover's coming up soon, too.
Yeah.
I said soon. I didn't say when. I said soon.
The Zero Theorem and the Rover will be on the same video in a couple of weeks.
Yeah. So, that's all we've got for today, and join us tomorrow for our Academy Awards predictions, Sunday for Versus. And AJ, any parting words?
That's it.